This episode is presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism Bureau. Discover the art of adventure at Utah's gateway to the parks. Cedar City is within a few hours' drive from 6 different national parks and monuments, and only 30 minutes from fresh snow at Bryan Head Resort. Check out visitcedarcity.com to plan your next trip. This episode is sponsored by the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center. Dedicated to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs, it provides resources and services aimed at fostering business creation, growth, and retention. The center features the Makerspace, where entrepreneurs and small businesses can have access to 3D printers, video production and photography equipment, t-shirt printing, and more. Whether you're starting a new venture or looking to expand an existing one, the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center offers the tools and guidance to help you succeed. To learn more and get involved, visit innovationcenter.cc. Hello and welcome to the Explore Local podcast presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head in partnership with Cedar City Iron County Economic Development, produced by Dallas Smith Media, and I'm your host, David Johnson. All right, today we have Brad Carroll, who's with the Utah Shakespeare Festival, and Brad is the music director for A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, right?
That's right.
All right, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. Okay, let's just hit right into that. So you're the music director. So what does that all entail? And then maybe we can get into A Gentleman's Guide.
Okay, well, what it entails normally is just, teaching all of the music to whatever musical is being done, and then sort of guiding it through so that the music plays along with the drama, just sort of, sculpting the whole thing musically. And depending on how the music is handled, conduct an orchestra. I mean, we're using tracks these days, so I'm creating tracks for the shows.
Oh, wow.
Which is its own
it's
ball
a different
of wax.
beast.
Yeah, it's a whole different area. But and this year we've sort of combined those two things into Gentleman's Guide, where I'm on stage playing the piano, which is not something that they normally do.
Yeah.
So it's a unique approach to it.
Right. So is the idea with, well, actually, why don't we back up?
Okay.
Why don't you give what's the premise of, without giving things away, what's the premise behind A Gentleman's Guide?
Okay. It's, well, first of all, it's based on a novel from the early 1900s. It was made into a film starring Alec Guinness 25 years before he was Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's about this young guy who's sort of on the down and out. He just lost his mother, and he finds out that he is the 9th in line to become the Earl of this famous, wealthy royal family in town in England. And somebody mentions, they don't believe him at first, and he's just lost his mother. And what he finds out is that she was part of that family.
Oh.
And so this woman that he's involved with happens to say, well, that's crazy. I mean, because in order to become the Earl, 8 people would have to die.
Yeah.
And the ding, the light bulb goes off. And so it's this crazy, very British sense of humor story about how he goes about climbing that ladder and taking these people out. And I know it sounds gruesome, but it's handled in such a fun way that you can't really get upset about it.
Yeah, it's kind of a comedy.
Yeah, it's very much a comedy. And some of them, they die accidentally.
Yeah.
And so he finally makes it to the top.
Yeah, I like how you say the British humor. And that's why I kind of said kind of a comedy, because unless you kind of know some of the British wit and humor, sometimes it can come off dry.
But this is pretty, this is Americanized enough. I mean, the film with Alec Guinness is very dry. Very droll. And
I was thinking with Alec Guinness, my dad used to love to watch, BBC comedies and things like that. And so I got the spectrum of comedic perspectives.
And one of the things I should mention about that makes the show special, and it started with the Alec Guinness movie. One person plays all of the victims.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So in the movie, Alec Guinness plays all 8 of the people he offs, and we've got one guy playing all of them. Some of them are women. So it's very much a costume parade for that actor.
I think John D'Antonio was telling me about that. I forgot about that as well. That's
awesome.
Awesome.
Part of what really makes it hilarious is watching this person just transform from one crazy Brit to another.
Yeah, yeah.
And then get offed.
So you're on stage at a piano. Is it trying to give a little bit of a ragtime feel? Is that the idea? Or?
Yes. What Amanda wanted was the feel of a British musical, which is basically British vaudeville. And the first thing she said was, I want an on-stage pianist. So John came to me and said, is that you? Because John and I don't know each other that well yet. And I said, well, it certainly could be.
Right.
So we started talking about it. And it became me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm sitting up there looking like a saloon pianist.
Yeah, I can just picture the fingers going.
Tinkling away and trying to keep track of the action. And
Yeah. Well, now you said something right before we started about, the audience sees this piano, but behind scenes, you're actually Captain Kirk. So let's talk a little bit about, was it Captain Kirk the reference you made? Yeah. Let's talk I don't want to ruin the magic for people, but there's so much behind the scenes on just the music side. People don't realize.
And they've talked it up quite a bit, but this is the first time I've ever talked about it. We decided that Amanda and I both felt at the same moment that one of the greatest characters in the show is the orchestration. It's sort of like a Bugs Bunny cartoon a lot of times.
It carries you through it.
It comments on the action, and we hated to lose the sound of all of those additional instruments that you'd have. And it was a small orchestra to begin with in New York, in the New York production, I think 11 people. And since we've been doing tracks in recent years, I said, well, we could do sort of a combo platter. I could be playing live, and I can create tracks that go with the piano.
Right.
And we just have to figure out exactly how to go about cueing them. Because normally when we do tracks, there's a person in the booth in the back. The conductor is back there controlling everything.
Right.
So you hit the space bar and the next cue plays. Well, I can't play the piano and hit the space bar. So we rigged a pedal to be the space bar. So I've got one foot doing the damper pedal on the piano, and my left foot actually controls every cue that gets fired. And there are something like 300 cues in the show.
Wow.
So I've got a computer screen here and a speaker here and a control down here so I can control whose mics I'm tuning into.
Oh my goodness.
And then I've got buttons over here in case something goes wrong and I need to go forward or back up on the computer.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm sitting at a control panel on a spaceship.
Yeah.
But the audience sees the back of a piano.
I love that.
It's crazy.
Much. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, I'm I don't know how I'd phrase it, a mild musician. Play the guitar, have recorded stuff in the past, but played at shows, love to go watch like rock shows and things. And, what I'm picturing is just like, some of those lead guitarists, they have like 30 pedals in front of them and whatever mic little gadgets they have next to their mic and just stepping all the pedals to make all these different sounds. And, and in a show, actually, when you were talking about how the music carries, and I'm kind of meshing both that thought with the concert and this, I remember when I was a kid, they maybe I was at school or something, they showed a Looney Tunes cartoon and they showed the effect of music, and they showed the cartoon while somebody just played some music going along with it. And then they showed it with just completely silence, and they showed how just the comedic timing of things just fell flat without the music. Right. So it's interesting to me to think of those timings and then the pedals that you're doing.
Right.
It's just crazy. And when I've played in the past, I love playing with like a full band.
Of course.
Because just the layering and recording is a whole different ball game, which I'd love for you to go into. The layering, it's amazing how like I can record a guitar part, and then record a bass part and then layer them on top of each other. And just even the two, it's just like, oh my gosh.
You just start to build this whole world.
The sound is full. But then there's something to be said sometimes about turning off all the parts except for just the bass or just the piano. And it gives it almost a stillness and a climax and decrescendo, I guess, or
Yeah,
a crescendo and
yeah.
decrescendo or whatever you want. Like I said, I'm a mild musician, so yeah, I'm not going to use all the right terms. But tell me, let's actually talk a little bit about that. The life of being a music director, and maybe just use A Gentleman's Guide as an example of some of the things you went through. You kind of on the surface highlighted some of that. Maybe talk about going through the process.
Sure. Well, one of the big difference between being a concert musician doing a rock band and having all those pedals is nobody cares that we're watching you stomp on those pedals to get the different effects.
You like
we're
to see
trying to hide all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that it just feels like there's a band in the room behind me.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting at the piano.
Yeah.
So I've done tracks before, and so what I did was I went through the score and tried to figure out what would carry the story and the jokes and the accents and those things that you talked about in Looney Tunes, because I grew up on Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Everything I know, I learned from Bugs Bunny, and Carl Stalling, who's the guy who did all the music for those cartoons. And without it, there's not much there.
Yeah, it's true.
So what I end up doing in these computer programs that I have, and I've got all these music libraries with lots of different sounds. So you can create an orchestra, you can create a string quartet, you can, kind of create anything you need to create.
Yeah.
Is I start at the bottom, like you said, with the bass line. And I'll play in a bass line. But you've got to play in the whole song, the bass line. And then you go back and I'll usually add, okay, now I'm going to play in the cello line. And so one at a time, you add the instruments and you start stacking them until you've got everything you think you want. Then it's a matter of going back and mixing it so that it doesn't just sound like, because if you don't mix it, it just sounds like it's all been done on a toy piano.
Yeah, explain what you mean by mixing it for those who don't
controlling the various volumes and intensities of the instruments.
Creating balance.
Yeah, like players automatically do for you in an orchestra. They read what's on the page and make those adjustments. It's loud, it's soft. You get louder, you get softer, you accent, all of those sorts of things that don't just happen when you play them in.
Yeah,
there's a certain amount you can do from the keyboard when I'm playing in the instruments.
Right.
But there's a lot that then it's going back and adjusting it and bringing up the clarinet a little bit because it needs to be hotter than the oboe or whatever the combination is. And oftentimes I find that the best thing to do is just take one of those instruments out completely because it starts to get too crowded.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the sort of with time constraints, if I had, 1,000 more hours, I could really go in and finesse it. But it already takes 400 hours.
Yeah.
To put together tracks for a show like this.
Yeah.
So it's,
crazy.
it's like making music and playing Beat the Clock at the same time, to get it done.
Yeah. Meet your deadlines.
Yeah.
There.
And then you get it into rehearsal.
Yeah.
And with the actors, and you start discovering that needs to be a little bit slower. So then I'll take it home and I'll slow that section down. And so it's this ongoing, living, breathing thing.
Right.
All the way through until opening.
Yeah.
And then we sort of lock in and go, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm going to digress a little bit because I found out Michael Barr and I share this love for my favorite band, Weezer. And so I'm a real nerd and I know all these real nerdy things about them. And it makes sense because they're considered nerd rock. But with their very first album, the Blue Album, this is during the grunge era. I remember the lead singer talked about when they were recording it, he was very obsessive, compulsive about the balance of everything. And especially then in like the grunge era, he just kept wanting to turn up the guitars, almost drowning out the voice because he wanted the music to carry it and the voice to just kind of be part of the instrumental almost. And a lot of criticism about them since then is that a lot of their music is too polished and too poppy now. And like the diehard fans love that old stuff. And it's because now they've turned down the guitars, they've turned up the vocals, they're really focused on the vocal melodies.
Yeah.
And they're known for doing a lot of weird projects. Like they did a project where he wrote a whole album on the piano and then backed it with the orchestra, with an orchestra. And then in the end, they actually took out, like you were saying about that balance, they actually ended up taking out almost all of his piano parts and having the orchestra and
Carry
things
it.
like that. Yeah. And which blew my mind. I'm like, well, I want to hear what the piano parts are now,
Right,
you know?
right.
So it's interesting trying to find that balance. And I love that you said do you typically start with the bass when you do? Because I've always said every good song is carried by a good bass line. Like every catchy song, poppy rock, you name it in theater or whatever. I feel like bass lines just kind of carry it and you build around it.
Yeah, it's the foundation.
That's just been my personal opinion about things.
And if you're writing band music, it's the tubas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like marching band music, it's the low instruments, and then you build on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. So I like I said, I know a little enough to feel like I'm talking shop with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, in show tunes, it's a similar. I mean, the bass serves a similar purpose as it does in rock music, or pop music. It's the heartbeat, of whatever the song is, and the same thing is true in a good show tune.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to have that underneath you.
Yeah. So you said you took 400 hours of putting this all together. So you were talking about doing the balancing. Once you kind of now talk about how you've created because what I'm interested in is when you're recording and you're creating tracks, you put it all together, but then to record it all, put it all together, time it with foot pedals, and then actually play live yourself while computerizing. Because like you said, a lot of times you have someone in a booth handling all these things and they're balancing it out for you or you know, with whomever the musicians or the vocalists are. So talk about putting that together, doing all the tracks, now putting it together live.
Okay. It's a process.
Yeah.
So once we got the tracks, which I'd been listening to in headphones since I began.
Yeah.
I created the whole thing in headphones. I don't have a big fancy, $1 million studio set up at home like Dallas has here.
Yeah. That's right.
And so once we got them into the theater, then you have to put all of that into the theater sound system. And we just got a brand new, highly sophisticated sound system. So we can take instruments and kind of put them anywhere in the room we want them. And so that we have a sound designer who handles all of that.
Yeah.
Getting it so that it sounds great in the room.
Well, did you have some trouble? Because I know there's been times where I've recorded things, even with the podcast, on headphones. And then you take off the headphones and you listen to it through another sound system. You're like, oh, that's not what I heard.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we had a little bit of that. And I mean, Scott O'Brien, our sound designer, found that if he went in and did a global adjustment on the bass, the strings, and the timpani, everything sort of found its center. All the other instruments worked.
Yeah.
But he just did the EQ or some, thing sound designers do. That's not on my pay grade. And then once it's in the system in the theater, we've got a guy, Cooper, who's mixing the show every day. So he's got control of the band. He's got control of me, and he's got control of the singers individually. So, like if we've got a really big house, all the levels change because more sound gets absorbed.
Yeah,
if we've got a smaller house, he does a completely different mix. So that's a day-to-day. Being the mixer is absolutely an artistic position.
Oh, completely
not
is.
a tech position.
I was a house manager for an amphitheater once when I was between jobs at the very beginning of my career. And I watched the lighting guys and the sound guys.
Yeah.
And it was like they were playing the music with the performers. I could just see them. They're just like moving, like they're
amazing.
going with the beat. And I was like, it's like you. Anyways,
They
it's
ultimately
so crazy.
They have a lot of control. And, and you can, I know that, on Broadway shows, I have friends who've gone in and said, I've got a little bit of a throat thing going on today. And he's like, thanks. And then, so they'll adjust the EQ on that singer for that performance because their voice is going to be thicker.
Yeah.
Because of whatever, I mean, they really know how to craft sound in space. And it's just amazing to me. I make the notes happen, but they make the magic happen, really.
Yeah, that's true. Well, so this year you're working on a gentleman's guide. Oh, and I guess was there anything else you wanted to say about the mixing with the live?
No, I mean that's kind of what it is. I mean it's a little bit academic, until you get your head around it, then it starts to become artistic. But first of all, it's just making sure everything's going where it needs to go and sounding like it needs to sound. And then then you mix it all together.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that really goes with something Michael Barr said when he was on the show. We talked about, he mentioned how sometimes parents are concerned about, my kid wants to go into theater. Can they make a living? And he says, of course, because there's every kind of job out there.
Yeah.
In theater, it's just about finding your niche or niche, however you want to say it. Niche. To see what you want. And just talking about this, I mean, somebody that loves studio and doing recording and the audio, I mean, there's so many avenues that you can go. I mean, working for Utah Shakespeare Festival would be just awesome.
Yeah. Because we kind of do it all here.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got to say, having a great mixer is worth $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes
a difference. Well, I know when I go to shows, whether it's a play or whether it's a rock concert or whether it's just I'm going somewhere where there's maybe presenters on stage, the sound makes all the difference in the world. Like I hate it when you go to something and you can hear them, but not it's just quiet enough that you can't quite.
Yeah. You have to work too hard.
You're like leaning into it, and the audience is quieter usually during those times.
Yeah, because they're trying to hear.
Everybody's trying to listen, and and then there's other times where you could tell their monitor, their feedback from their monitor is just not working. Yeah, anyways, all those fun.
It's a big piece of the pie.
Yeah.
It really is for success.
So tell our audience, when did you first start working for Utah Shakespeare Festival?
My first summer was 2002. I was brought here to direct Man of La Mancha.
Okay. But not as the music director,
no,
as the director of the play.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell us about that first experience.
Well, I had never even thought about being asked to the Utah Shakespeare Festival because I was primarily a guy who did musicals.
Oh, really?
And they did a whole lot of Shakespeare and one musical. So I just figured they've got a whole list of people that they probably use.
Right.
I came over to visit in 98 and 99, both the summers, because I had a whole bunch of friends in the company. I'll just go see what Utah Shakes is all about.
Yeah.
And so I met Fred and I met Scott Phillips during that time. And we were just acquainted, and they knew the theater that I worked at in California. Mm-hmm. And then I was in Tokyo in 2001 doing a big thing, opening a new theme park with Disney.
Oh, yeah.
And I got an email from the Utah Shakespeare Festival. And I thought, what, really? They probably want a recommendation of some actor I've worked with or something like that. And I opened it and it was, would you be interested in coming to direct our production of Man of La Mancha?
That is so cool.
And I wrote back and I said, I certainly would be. And it was all because Fred and Scott had seen my work someplace else.
Yeah.
And no mention was ever made of it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was working here.
That's awesome.
And loved it.
Yeah.
And so I got through that first summer and thought, well, we'll see what happens. And then they asked me back the next summer. And then it just kept happening.
Wow, that is awesome.
So it was really, and eventually it sort of became my new artistic home.
Yeah.
And then I lived here. I moved here in 2005 and lived here for 3 years.
Oh, really? Wow.
And then I came back in 2012 and taught at the university for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So doing Man of La Mancha was a show I had music directed before.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah.
But to get to actually direct the play, and we had the great Bob Peterson. A lot of Utah folks will recognize that name. He's gone now, but this was his 21st production of Man of La Mancha.
Really?
Playing Don Quixote. Because he was perfect for he'd been playing the role since he was in his 50s, and now he was 71 years old.
Yeah.
And he's playing this role again.
Oh my gosh.
And just a voice from heaven. In fact, I think, and I hope I don't get this wrong, I think he's the voice of God on the Temple Tour.
Oh, really?
He's just got this glorious booming voice, and he used to stop the show with The Impossible Dream. He would get a standing ovation in the middle of the show, which never happens.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people knew him, and it was just, you couldn't not stand up.
Yeah.
It was glorious.
That is awesome.
So for that to be my first show, to get to work with this guy who's, famous.
Yeah.
He was Robert Goulet's understudy in Camelot.
Really?
On Broadway in 1960, whatever that was, too. Yeah.
That is amazing.
So he'd been around forever.
Yeah. Well, nothing like getting a good launch in the beginning.
Yeah. I was a little bit terrified when I found out who he was.
Yeah.
But it ended up working just fine and had a great time, and honestly have been having a great time ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So talk about that, because, you know, I mean, it's probably fairly common, but I think most people would think, oh, you're the music director, you just do the music. Oh, you're the director of the show, you just do the show. But you've settled both, being the director of plays. So what was your background that got you? It sounds like you've done primarily a lot of the music directing, but you've also done directing shows themselves.
Yeah.
So how did you get into both of those?
I started out back when I was 20 years old as a music director.
Okay.
And I thought that that's what I was going to be for the rest of my life.
Uh-huh.
So I did that for 10 years, and that's all I did. I music directed lots of stuff all over the country. And then one year I went to this theater, and the artistic director stopped me in the hall one day and said, I think you need to direct.
Really?
And I said, oh, okay. What do you got in mind? You know?
Yeah.
It took me totally by surprise. Nothing I'd ever thought about.
Yeah. Had you been an actor?
I'd been an actor, yeah, as well.
Before? Okay.
And the person who was the artistic director had been one of my teachers in college.
Oh, really?
So we had some, history together. And I thought he meant, go to the Rotary Club and take a quartet of people and put together a little 20-minute show. Yeah. That's what I thought he meant. Uh-huh. And then I was handed the holiday musical, which was Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella.
Yeah.
Huge. I'd never directed a book musical before, but this guy trusted me and knew something that I didn't, I guess.
That's awesome.
And it went really well. And so I got offered another show, and then another show, and then another show. And then the next thing I knew, I was directing more than I was music directing. Really? So they hired another music director to come in. Uh-huh. And then we worked together for years.
Huh. And this is all out in California?
This is in California, yeah.
What theater were you with?
It was it's PCPA, the Pacific Conservatory for the Performing Arts.
Okay,
a lot of people here have come through that program.
Yeah.
It's been around for over 50 years now.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a great training program where your faculty are the resident artists.
Oh,
so they are the resident actors and designers and whatnot in the company. But then in the conservatory, you're in the classroom with them.
Oh, all right.
So as a teacher, it keeps you honest.
Yeah.
Because you can't say one thing in the classroom and do something else on stage. I mean, it's an amazing feeder system for both professionals to walk that line, and students to get to work with people who really do it.
Yeah.
Because at a lot of universities, honestly, you work with people who never really did what they taught.
Yeah. Well, that's funny that you say that, because I had Minnie Benson on, president for SUU, and one of the things we talked about is a lot of my favorite professors were adjunct professors, because they were out there in the grind, and they weren't just talking about, they were talking about case studies, but they were case studies they had just dealt with or were in the middle of dealing with. You could hear and see how that applied in the real world and get the academic base to support that. And to me, that was like the epitome of quality education.
Yeah, it's magic.
And I loved the like tenured professors and stuff too, but
of course,
but there was something just so different about those that had that practical experience to see that applied and watch them in action. And actually after, and I'm thinking of undergrad and my master's, there are people that I'm still connected with, adjunct professors that I'm still connected with, that professionally that I've worked with and everything after the fact. So kind of like what you're saying.
It's very much the same.
Yeah. It's very interesting to hear the way that theater works.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's not uncommon though in theaters around the country.
Well, it used to be very common. Milwaukee had a program like that. Lots of they were connected to the university. Ashland was connected to that used to be the thing.
Yeah.
That's sort of how the whole regional system got going. And then programs of Denver, the conservatory program was cut. Milwaukee, no longer connected. You know what I mean? They started falling away. So PCPA is one of the remaining companies who still does that.
Yeah.
And they were, again, PCPA was sort of fashioned after Ashland.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. Well, I want to dive into more of what you've done at Shakespeare, but I've got to go back to just a little aside you threw in there and get a little more detail on this. And we don't have to spend too long, but you worked on Tokyo Disney. And was that when it was 2001 when it opened?
Tokyo Disney Sea. Tokyo Disneyland had already been opened. And they opened a park that butts up right against the back of it. So the two parks are back to back.
Okay.
In 2001, and they call it Tokyo Disney Sea because everything in it is water-based.
I was going to ask, do you mean SEA?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So as opposed to Disneyland, that was their sort of thing.
So what did you do for them in that opening? That is fascinating.
I did. They were going outside of the Disney box a lot when they opened that park. And it was an entertainment-based park, not a ride-based park, although there were some incredible rides in it.
Sure, there's some Little Mermaid stuff going on there, maybe. Yeah.
Little Mermaid, and they had the Indiana Jones ride, and the version of the Matterhorn over there was this incredible Jules Verne.
Really, like 2,000 Leagues?
Yeah.
Sort of a thing?
Okay. Yeah, this incredible 3 roller coasters going around in the mountain. I mean, it was phenomenal rides. But the focus of the company was the entertainments, the shows that they put on. And so I was hired to put together a 30-minute tribute to the Broadway musical.
Really?
Yeah. And it's the first show they had ever done at Disney that did not feature Disney characters.
Wow.
So it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it wasn't, Mickey and Minnie take you on a tour of Broadway. It wasn't that at all.
Oh, boy.
Come on, kids. So I was put together with a team of people, and we put together this. Okay, this is what makes me laugh about it. A 30-minute tribute to the Broadway musical. Mm-hmm. We covered 28 shows. It was all musical.
Yeah.
$12 million budget.
Wow.
I thought I died and gone to heaven. And you know what? $12 million budget, we were still cutting corners. They built a brand new 1,500-seat state-of-the-art theater to open it in because the park was brand new.
Yeah.
And I worked on that for 3.5 years leading up to it.
That is cool.
And yet one of the most distinct memories I have, and it wasn't about the show. It was about when we were in rehearsal in the park, getting to come in the back door of the park before it was finished.
Oh, yeah.
So you saw these artists like painting streaks on the rocks on the mountain.
Yeah.
The kind of detail blew my mind.
Yeah.
I'd never
the realism they try to go for. Yeah.
I thought, they're rocks. You spray them gray.
Yeah.
No, they were putting in like little tiny brush striations in the rocks. And that was just one thing, just all the craftsmanship and the artistry that goes into making that, so that when you walk in and you see this huge lagoon and this mountain, and it was phenomenal. And then getting to do that show with everybody's favorite show tunes in it.
Yeah. And they obviously, the idea is to truly make it immersive, and the more realistic, the more immersive it's going to feel.
And it had to be geared towards what the Japanese felt were the great Broadway songs.
Oh, okay.
We pitched a couple of songs, and the Japanese businessmen said, "What is that?"
Yeah.
They didn't understand it.
Interesting.
I was like, okay, we're not doing that.
Oh.
So we did a lot of the greatest hits,
Yeah. You had to be in tune with the, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, be in tune with the cultural distinctions.
Absolutely.
There as well. That's awesome.
Which was another thing I loved. I never had dreamed of Japan being like a vacation destination.
Yeah.
I fell in love with that place the minute I got off the plane.
Wow.
I climbed Mount Fuji before I left Japan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That
just
would be
stuff like that,
So were you living there for 3 years then while you worked on this?
I was there. I probably made 10 trips back and forth, but before we opened on the end of August of 2001, and I moved there at the beginning of May. So I was there May through August living there.
Okay. That's cool.
It was amazing.
When was it at the tail end that you came over to Utah Shakespeare?
I got the letter while I was there.
Yeah.
To come back here the next summer. So I came here 2002.
So it was right after you finished up in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is so cool.
So it was crazy, Disney and then Utah Shakespeare. And
I know
what's going on in my life, but I love it.
Well, yeah. And why that stands out to me is not only what an incredible experience, but with my position, it's all about economic development and driving business and driving the economy, everything from, manufacturing and retail to tourism, and trying to put all those pieces together. And what that says to me is it speaks volumes about the level of talent that Utah Shakespeare Festival is able to draw. To bring someone of your talent and your caliber that Disney's hired, for this incredible project. And I'm sure you're humble enough to think, I'm the music director, but to have your talent to come here and then see that talent now for 23 years that you've been coming off and on to Utah Shakespeare Festival. Just what an amazing thing. And it shows just the value to the economy here locally that Utah Shakespeare Festival has. And I don't know if there's thoughts you have I know that's kind of a side tangent on that, but I don't know if you've seen things like that yourself.
It's, for me, it's the spirit of the festival that brought me here, that I could feel the 2 summers I came to visit, and plus seeing the work. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is what I do at home, but it's not better, not bigger, not grander, just different.
Yeah.
Because location partially.
Yeah.
I could go to Bryce on the days I didn't see shows.
Yeah.
That was such a perk.
Yeah, that's awesome.
To get to go just play in Zion.
Yeah.
But just it's the whole it's the gestalt of the place that I think really, as I was telling Dallas before we talked, that's what I still remember and still cling to here.
Yeah.
Sometimes I could just feel Fred Adams standing right next to me.
That's awesome.
And it's a real thing here.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy to see that the festival, as it has, evolved, has not lost that.
Yeah, that sense of identity.
Yeah, because I think it's what a lot of our patrons identify with as well.
I love that you threw in the word gestalt. So I'm just saying, look that one up in the dictionary, kids at home. And that's a perfect segue to what I want to get to is 23 years, you've been coming back, lived here for a few years. Why? What has been? Well, you just talked about the why. So now let's talk about the what. What have been some of your favorite productions as a director or a music director that you've been able to be involved with? Because it sounds like you've been involved with a lot.
Done a few. Yeah. Well, not to put them in any kind of order, but I think at the top of the list of it's one of the top 5 great experiences in my entire career. Happened here. It was in 2004. We did a production of a musical called The Spitfire Grill, which it's another one of those that reaches people. It's a redemption story basically. That takes place in rural America. So there's
Spitfire Grill sounds like a barbecue joint.
Well, that's kind of what it was.
Really?
It took place in this bar and grill in this tiny little town, and it's based on a film from the 70s, and it's true to the film, but it changes. It goes further into the happy ending redemption at the end than the film does. But it was the show, the cast, the design team. It was the gestalt, here we go again, of it all, that it was a perfect storm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And people still talk about that production. The people who were in it still say, God, I wish I could do another Spitfire Grill,
Really?
Yeah, but I have to put, and coincidentally, the music director on that show got a position at UCLA and had to leave.
Oh, really?
So I stepped in and took over playing and conducting that show after it opened, just because I was going to be here. I didn't have anything lined up to go to.
That is
so
awesome.
I took over there and stayed and got to see the show every night and play it and conduct. We had a live band in the pit.
Yeah.
I think the other highlight would have to be Les Mis. I had never really thought about doing it. It wasn't one I was dying to do, and it sort of fell to me. And I was like, well, heck yeah, I'm not going to turn that down.
Yeah, that's one of those timeless classics that even those who don't like theater at least know it.
Yeah, and it was just another one of those really great experiences. Because one of the things I said to the cast when we first started, the very first night, I said, here's what we're up against, gang. Everybody knows this show by heart. Everybody knows this show by heart. So we've got to snap them out of that. Or they'll just sit back and go, oh, I love this song. While you're saying, they won't pay attention to what the story actually is because they've already got their version in their head. So we tried to find a way to make it all fresh and new without changing a thing.
Right.
And I had a group of actors who were so willing to do that. And I had several people in the audience that I've seen this show 17 times and it's the first time I've ever heard that lyric.
Really?
Things like that.
Yeah.
And I said, I will be sure to pass that on to the cast because that's what we were striving for, is to make them hear it in a new way.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what made it so special.
Yeah,
and again, it was just a perfect storm of casting. We had a big live orchestra down underneath the stage, which I also ended up taking over conducting because the conductor got a national tour and we didn't want to deny him that opportunity.
Jack of all trades here.
So I was like, I'll do it. Sure. Why not?
That's awesome.
So it's funny how things like that have, come through.
Yeah.
But I mean, lots of great experiences. Camelot, doing Camelot with Brian Vaughan as King Arthur was a dream come true.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2005, I think.
Was Camelot? No, I think he was in something else. I was thinking Ty Burrell when he came through. It wasn't Camelot. He was in like Henry the.
He was in the outdoor shows. I saw him play Oberon in Midsummer, one of the summers I came to visit.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to digress.
No.
I was thinking
Lion in Winter he was in.
What is it?
Yeah, Lion in Winter.
Lion in Winter.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
He was in that.
Cool.
Which I also saw.
Oh, that's
before
awesome.
I worked here. Yeah.
Oh, before the 2002.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
this
so
was in
awesome.
the late 90s when Ty was here. Yeah.
Well, okay. So favorite well, you know what? Let me actually ask this.
This is fun.
Yeah. You talked about kind of putting your own spin on Les Mis, or maybe you've done this with other shows. What has been one of your favorite songs to produce while over the years?
Oh boy.
And that's hard. Maybe it's because you put a cool little spin on it. Maybe it's just because it's a classic, timeless, or maybe it's an unknown. What are some of your favorite, like the actual songs that you've been able to do?
Well, I think going back to Les Mis, Stars, the song that Javert sings. And I'd seen Les Mis a couple of times and I was like, what is he singing about? It was all about the singing of it.
Yeah.
Because you got to have that big voice to play Javert.
Yeah.
And with Brian, Brian's an actor first and a singer second, And again, he was my dream Javert. And when he called me and said, we'd like you to direct Les Mis and let me know if you've got anybody in mind for casting. And I said, well, you as Javert. This long silence on the other end of the phone. And then I hear, dude. I said, yeah, Brian, for my money, you're the only choice. And for my, experience, it was the best acted version of, you understood who he was. He wasn't just this bad guy.
Yeah.
You understood what was driving him.
Yeah.
And a lot of it came through that song.
I love that.
Because he just made it about the words.
Yeah.
And not about the music. And if you can get, I've discovered over the years, if you can get actors, I always say the lyrics have to come first. I'm a composer. I'm the guy who writes the tunes.
I was just about to get into that.
I'm the guy who writes the tunes. And I still say the words have to come first.
Yeah.
Because without the words, it's just la la la. There's no reason to sing.
Right. So
you've got to find a way to let the lyric lead and the music serve the lyric.
Yeah.
And in a good song, that's not hard to do.
Right. Yeah.
There's some songs where you just really have to work at it. But Brian was just consummate at that because he was an actor first.
That's really refreshing to hear you say that because I love theater. I've always loved theater. Musicals are okay for me because I'm an okay singer. And when I did theater, it was like every other play was a musical. And I'm like, come on, there's more to theater than just musicals. But I also love music is the thing. And one of the things I'll go a live theater, live musicals. I don't like seeing the movie productions of theater. There's actually one version of Les Mis that I really like, but my wife and family members may shoot me for this, but like I'm not really in love with like the Phantom movie and some of these productions. I like it live, and and hearing you talk about letting the lyrics carry, I feel like that's why. Is I feel like a lot of these productions that I see, it's hard to follow the story because the vocals you're so drowned by the beauty of the vocals that you're not really hearing. And my kids sometimes during musicals will be like, what are they talking about?
Right.
And if an audience is saying, what are they talking about? Then you're not really telling the story.
Exactly.
The music should move the emotion to help you understand the story. This is Dave's personal opinion, Soapbox 101. But so it's really refreshing to hear you say that. And I love that you even added this. I was going to tease you that it's kind of ironic to hear you say that, but I think it's probably because, I think it's because you know the balance between the directing and the music directing, right? You see how the story's told, and there's times where the music carries forward, but most of the time the music is like supporting cast in a way.
Completely supportive.
Yeah.
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 And I mean, and you know, like I said, I always qualify it by saying in a good song, because there are a lot of not good songs out there, you know, and a lot of them are in musicals.
Yeah.
You know, especially recently, you know, but I mean,
I agree with that.
If you just look at the classic stuff, I mean, music, here I go. Music has a power that most people can't even understand.
Yeah.
They feel it.
Yeah.
But they don't realize it. I mean, because music goes to your emotional center before it goes to your intellectual center.
Right, yeah.
Words, it's the opposite. So with music, you're getting both. When you sing is one of the only times where you're using both sides of your brain equally.
Yeah.
The left and the right.
Huh.
You know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is why singing is such an important thing to do, you know?
Now, what we're saying may sound almost contradictory to what you and I were talking about in the beginning when I mentioned that Looney Tunes with and without the music, because we were saying, well, without the music, it's hard to follow the story or you get bored with the story. But that's, I'm tying what we're saying now to what we were saying then is, what we're saying then is without that music, you don't realize that the music's helping carry you and engage you into the story more. Yeah. Like you think of Charlie Chaplin, right? Silent films, they were playing music in the background, a lot of times live.
Watching what was happening and making up music to fit it.
Exactly right. And so, because intellectually, like you were saying, you're following the story and the music's carrying you. But when sometimes the cart comes before the horse, that's when it's hard to follow the story and be like, no, what is going on? And so often, when you watch movies, you don't even know music's playing.
Right.
You have no idea. And if somebody were to flip the switch on the music, all that emotion that you're feeling while watching this scene would just be completely gone. Yeah. That's what cracks me up. If you ever watch, this is childish, but the YouTube like bad lip readings.
Oh yeah.
They pretty much take out the music and then they just do dumb lip readings, ad-libbing things in, and you realize, oh my gosh, without the music, that movie is so awkward.
Yeah. I remember seeing a clip years ago that it was about that very thing, about how does the music affect? And it was that famous shot of Julie Andrews running up the mountainside and twirling around before she starts singing The Hills Are Alive, right? And they had like war music from a war picture playing. And then all of a sudden she started spinning around and you heard like guns strafing from, machine guns from airplanes. And said, see the difference?
Yeah. A world of
difference in Looney Tunes. Man, Carl Stalling was a genius to be able to hit all of those and conduct it live. I mean, he'd write it and then conduct the little blips on the movie screen to get everything to line up. And music's a powerful thing. Yeah.
Well, and when you mentioned the Looney Tunes and hitting the little blips, I was thinking something similar when you were talking about doing all the pedals behind the piano, like those little things like blink, 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 as somebody's walking across while the piano's playing. You don't think blink, blink, blink. You think Tweety Bird stepping across or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know, or
and if it was
across.
a tuba, you wouldn't think Tweety Bird.
Yeah, right.
It's
Exactly.
instrumentation too.
Yeah.
That's one of the most
Yeah,
important.
tuba,
things.
you're going to think elfin. Boom.
Yeah,
boom,
exactly.
boom. Yeah,
but if
or
it's
whatever.
violins going pluck, 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 it's a little bird. Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I mean, just knowing what sounds depict what pictures,
Yeah.
that's an inborn talent, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
you can learn it to a degree, but
Uh-huh.
you have to understand it to make it work.
That's so fun. I'm glad to kind of nerd out on some of these
totally.
things. That's so fun. Well, so tell me, tell for our audience, they're coming to attend Shakespeare Festival this year. Are going to see A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. Tell me what you hope the audience gains from this particular production.
To be able to laugh in the face of things that aren't very laughable.
Yeah.
I think it's a great little antidote for our world today. There's just so much going on that's so unpleasant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can't laugh, it could get ugly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They
Not
say
to get-
laughter is the best medicine.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
there's something, and just in the way they present it, initially we were concerned that there was the word murder in the title and that it might put people off.
Yeah.
No, it's like watching a cartoon.
Uh-huh.
It really is. And in the way they've structured it and the way they've handled the music is fantastic and kind of offbeat.
Uh-huh.
It's not like standard show tunes.
You sure?
But the thing about it, the music is it all absolutely applies to what's happening in that moment of the play, no matter how absurd it gets.
Yeah.
So they push that envelope
Yeah.
for the audience. And I just think being able to laugh.
Well, it's funny that you say that. And when you mention the title and having the word murder, when I first heard the title, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that production, or that play or that show. Cause I've known of the old, or Alec Guinness, and things like that. I don't know that I actually saw Alec Guinness's, but I knew the premise of it and everything. And just when I read the title and then that was going to be one of the shows, just reading the title made me chuckle because clearly it's a comedy or something sarcastic.
Yeah.
I guess somebody could go in a real tragic form. That would actually almost be funny to see someone do a serious version.
Oh, dear. Both ends of the spectrum. I mean, the original book is called Israel Rank, which was the guy's name, The Autobiography of a Criminal.
Oh,
That's
really?
the original title.
Really? I didn't
Then
know
when they
that.
made the movie, the Brits called it Kind Hearts and Coronets, which has meanings that only the Brits understand.
Clearly.
I have no idea what that means.
We need to research that a little bit more.
Which is why I always forget that title because
Yeah.
I can't quite make it.
I love the
apply.
title, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
Yeah, I think it's perfect.
That leads to what you said earlier. That's kind of like almost Americanized it,
Yeah.
the humor
Yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
because it's got this level of like sarcasm to it, right?
I think that is not unfamiliar to audiences, especially with, all the films and British TV and, all of that.
Well, I guess to kind of wrap up, tell me your hopes or what you see for the future of Utah Shakespeare Festival and how you hope to continue on.
Well, I mean, obviously, I hope it just keeps going and going and going and going forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And I think as long as it continues to morph with the world, it will.
Yeah.
The minute you plant your big dinosaur feet in the tar pits is when you sink. And I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, we've got too many people who are too aware of just the world and our place in it.
Yeah.
I think I can say this out loud. I'll be back next summer.
Cool.
To music direct She Loves Me.
Oh, okay.
Which is one of my all-time favorite shows. That the last time I did it was 1983, I think. So it's been a while.
Me. Is that a spin-off one of the songs? I don't know that I've heard this production.
It's actually, do you know the movie You Got Mail?
Oh, yeah.
It's what that's based on.
Oh, really?
Two co-workers who are pen pals secretly.
Oh, okay.
That hate each other at the office. It's based on a Hungarian play from the late 20s.
Oh, that's awesome.
Called The Perfumery.
Uh-huh.
And then MGM made a film called The Shop Around the Corner with Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan and the guy who played The Wizard of Oz, Frank Morgan.
Uh-huh.
And it all takes place in a little perfumery shop. And it's
That's
these
fun.
two coworkers who hate each other at work, but they're secretly writing love letters to one another. And it's the whole story of how they come to find out
Oh, that's
about
great.
it. And the music is great. It's from the early 1960s. It's written by the guys who wrote Fiddler on the Roof, right before they wrote that.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they have a way of getting back to music and lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, the music is so in service to the lyrics
Yeah.
that every song in the play advances the plot and advances the character.
Mm-hmm.
We never stop to just do a number.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's that sort of that late golden age writing right before rock and roll came in and took over, you know?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just an absolute delight. It's wholesome. It's about real people with real people problems. You know,
We've got those.
Yeah, you know,
hence the laughter.
and just and how they navigate them.
That's awesome.
So I hope everybody comes to see it because it's kind of a sleeper, and it was originally too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's kind of low key compared to what was going on around it.
Right.
You know.
Make it fun.
Yeah, it's just about as sweet as it can get.
That's awesome. Well, Brad, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for making it
Pleasure
so
to have
easy.
you. Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah. So today we have Brad Carroll, who's the music director for A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. And Brad, we hope to talk to you more in the future.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.